Hey everyone! If you love the content I create and want to keep up with the latest videos, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your subscription not only supports me, but it also ensures you never miss out on exciting new content. Click the notification bell to stay updated and be part of a growing community. Thank you for being so supportive.
Most people think that television was invented in the early 1900s, but most people are wrong. Okay, here's the real untold story of TV. In 1873, British inventor Henry Dirks joined forces with scientist John Henry Pepper to create the first crude TV system. Their goal was to transmit moving pictures wirelessly through the air. They called it the televisor. No, not the best name. Despite its clunky appearance, the televisor worked. By 1874, they were able to transmit images of letters and numbers, and even a rudimentary drawing of a face. But there was a problem. The televisor could only transmit black and white images, and by the time color television was invented in the 1920s, it had become an expensive luxury good. So the vision of a world where everyone had access to this new technology was put on hold. Then, almost exactly a century later, something incredible happened. On July 1994, the very last analog TV signal in the world shut down, making way for digital broadcasts. And just like that, over 90% of American households lost their TV signal. At first, it seemed like a disaster. People were freaking out about all the static killing their cable boxes. But within a few months, nearly every analog TV in America had been replaced with a digital one, opening up a whole new world of high-def picture quality and surround sound. So today, we're going to rewind the clock and take a look back at how the invention of television changed the world. In the late 1800s, newspapers were becoming popular. People loved the idea that they could get their daily news delivered right to their doorstep. But there was a problem. It was expensive. If you wanted to stay up to date on current events, you needed to subscribe to multiple newspapers, one for national news, one for local news, and then maybe even more for sports or business. Enter the radio. Suddenly people could get their daily news delivered to them completely free. They just had to tune in at the right time. But there was still a problem. The radio was an audio-only medium. You couldn't see anything. Sure, you could imagine what the people looked like, but wouldn't it be better if you could actually see them? That's why the invention of television was such a big deal. For the first time, people could get their news delivered to them instantly, completely free, and they could see everything in living color. Of course, it wasn't quite that easy. There were decades of technical difficulties to overcome, not to mention the Great Depression and a world war. But finally, in the late 1940s, things started to come together. On July 1st, 1941, the FCC officially allocated the television broadcast band. Then 2 years later, the first regular public television service in the US began broadcasting. Of course, the programming was pretty bad. It was mostly just game shows and variety shows until the advent of the transistor in the 1950s made it possible for TV cameras to be smaller and lighter. Suddenly, TV crews were able to film things outside of the studio. By the end of the decade, there were dedicated news programs and even live coverage of major events like the 1960 presidential debates. And of course, once the novelty wore off, people realized that having cameras in your living room wasn't necessarily a good thing. We'll never forget the time Walter Cronkite accidentally showed a dead guy on air during the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And of course, there was the infamous moon landing hoax. Oh wait, never mind, it's not a hoax. Okay, moving on, the 1970s were a pivotal moment for television. It was the first time that it was possible for someone to watch TV for most of their waking hours. People were spending more time watching TV than they were spending time with their families. Not surprisingly, the amount of violence in American homes increased dramatically. But things got even worse in the 1980s when cable TV became popular. Suddenly, instead of being bombarded with mindless advertisements for things you didn't want, you were bombarded with mindless advertisements for things you didn't want. Alright, we'll stop now. But seriously, cable TV opened up a whole new world of possibilities for television. Suddenly there were dozens of channels to choose from, meaning that there was always something on that you might want to watch. And it wasn't just mindless programming anymore, there was actual educational value. Do you remember all those nature documentaries that you were forced to watch growing up? Well, cable TV made those possible. But it also created a whole new industry of television critics to help you wade through all the options. Now, we don't know about you, but we love us some good old-fashioned TV criticism. So if you want to learn more about the latest TV controversies, be sure to stay tuned.